Welcome back to It's Only Cooking. I'm John Ruska. This is not a studio. This is my kitchen, so you can hear all the fans running on the oven. It's not a TV studio. So we're going to do some step-by-step cooking like we always do, so I can throw in a few of the tips and the tricks that I've learned and I picked up as a COVID cook. Now, I think that may have been a sarcastic term, but it also may be a commentary on my skill set. Be that as it may, we all remember when COVID happened, restaurants were closed down. So grocery stores were open, and you couldn't get the restaurant experience unless you went to the store, got your materials, and you cooked yourself. Well, I had my standard recipes, but those got tired pretty quick. So I went on the internet. I went on the TV shows that are on, and I picked up little things along the way, and things that I could do, and things that I thought would be interesting. So we'll see what we get here today with my limited skills, but enthusiasm, and hopefully we get full flavor. So we had a short holiday season because of the late Thanksgiving this year. And because of that, many of you are probably in the same situation I am, is you're a little worn out from doing the planning, doing the shopping, doing the prepping, forgetting something, going back and doing more shopping and fighting the crowds, then prepping, then cooking, then figuring out how to serve it, and cleaning. And many of you may have leftovers, and where you made just too much, or you have raw materials or ingredients that you had too much of. And you're tired of cleaning, you're tired of using 30 dishes to make a dish, and you've got your whole kitchen wiped out. Well, we're going to try to look at some simple recipes using some of those materials and some of those food items you have left. And we're going to try to do it all in one pan where we can. Now, for the sake of the show and for making it easy for you, I have everything laid out in pre-made dishes and pre-made glassware, and that's okay. But one thing I did do is I put my spices and left them in their normal storage containers, so you don't have to take them out of there for these recipes. It's pretty straightforward. So with that being said, what we had for Thanksgiving holiday was a tenderloin. So we had a little bit of tenderloin left over, and I made steak tips, and it was all going to be for this show, and we ate it all. So we had to then, I made a prime rib for New Year's, and there was just two of us eating it. We had a ton left over. I said, great, we're going to do a show, and we're going to use these leftovers because we have some really excellent meat left here. I can show it up to the camera here. We have some excellent meat we're going to use, and the two dishes we're going to make today is we're going to make a stew using the beef tenderloin. Now, of course, you could make chili. You could do that, but we've already done that. And I encourage you to go back and watch that show because we show you a great way to make it with hamburger, but it's more succulent, better with beef, with steak. So the prime rib's a good substitute. I wouldn't recommend filet mignon. There's not enough fat in it. It probably wouldn't have a good flavor, but still pretty good. These other recipes will work great for it. And even turkey. If you had turkey left over, it can be used. You'll have to be a little more creative and adapt to it. So even though we're going to try to cook in one pan where possible, and we're going to try and keep it minimal, we still do our mise en place, even though we're going to use leftovers. So, of course, we have our beautiful prime rib that we have that we're going to use on the dish. We are going to have our some spices I use. We're going to use some tomato sauce because I like that in the stew. A little bit of sugar, onion powder. You can see these are the containers I use. Onion powder, thyme. Even though I use thyme on my prime rib, I want to put a little more in. We're going to do another little secret too, because we're not going to go and use our fancy special beef broth. We're just going to use a little secret here that I found, and I'm sure you've all seen it too. It's better than broth. These things are excellent, better than bouillon. They're excellent. We're going to use that. We're going to use some bay leaves. There's some garlic in there. We're going to use red onion because I used red onion for a lot of salads, things like that. I've got some leftover carrot we're going to use here, some potatoes that are in the water. We put the potatoes in the water because it takes out some of the starch and makes it not be so cloudy. So that's why we do that. And also you leave it in the water, your potatoes don't turn a funny color of brown and purple. And so we're also going to use celery, and I like to use the leafy ends, and you'd say, why would you use the leafy ends? Well, some of you have probably used celery flakes before. If you take a look, what are celery flakes? Well, they're the dried out ends of celery, and they give great flavor to things that you cook. And so salt and pepper, of course, and that's what we're going to do in that, and we'll get started putting that together right now. One of the things we're going to do for this sandwich is that we're going to shave this beef really, really thin, because that's the way it's going to be tender, and then we're going to saute it in a pan just to get it browned a little bit. But we'll do that after we get some sauteed up. That means your knife, and you can use either this kind, which is just a chef's knife, or you can use one that has more of a cupping in it, so it cuts easier. If you have particularly large or long pieces of meat, you may need it. This is pretty small, so I think we can just do it with the chef's knife. But again, you want to make sure that this thing is as sharp as you can get it. We've talked about this tool before. The name brand is Brad Broad. It's got an O with a cross through it, whatever that is, in Taylor. The thing is excellent. It's easier than a steel, and I can use it, and I'm an amateur COVID cook. So we're going to try and get this shaved, and I just pulled this out of the refrigerator because I want it to be firm so that I can cut this pretty thin. That piece is a little thick, so we're going to work on that a little better. We're going to get better each time. There we go. We're getting some good pieces there now. I'm trying not to get too much of the fatty pieces in there. Some people like their roast beef sandwiches or their corned beef a little more fat. I like to be able to bite it and just take it and go. So we'll try and get this as thin as we can. Yeah, those are some pretty good pieces there. And I think we've got a pretty fair amount for a sandwich. And we're just going to make, for the purpose of this show, we're going to make one really nice sandwich. And I'm not trying to approximate a Philly cheesesteak, but it's going to be definitely a beef steak sandwich with cheese on it. Okay, so we're going to take that and we'll be frying that on the stove in just a moment.
Hey, this is former Detroit Lion Rob Rubick and former Lapeer, Michigan school teacher. You're currently watching OCTV, Oxford Community Television. Enjoy it.
So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get ourselves some onions. The red onions, yeah, they're a little hot sometimes, but as you remember from when I've done onions before, when we saute them and bring that down, it actually makes these even sweet, even like a regular onion. So we're going to make these pieces, I don't know, 1/4-inch size pieces, and we've showed you this technique before. I know some people show you cutting this way. I don't want to risk it. Look at an onion. It already has all the pieces, you know, the side cut on them. So you don't need to do that. Just cut them like this, cut them like this, cut them like this. We've got this, and these are all nice and about the size we want them. So real quick, we're going to take these. We'll get these going. We're going to put these in the oil. We'll turn the pan. We're going to get that going so that while we're cutting the rest. Okay. We also, here's our celery. We're going to cut that end off that. The producer won't let me put that in the way, so let me leave that over there. This is a little big, so I don't want it to be done that way. Well, I'm using a Dutch oven today to do this. It's going to be heating up because the onions are cooking, and I'm going to throw everything on top of it, on top of the onions afterwards, and the wine. Remember, we want the wine to cook off the alcohol because that way it tastes better. But you could do this dish in a pressure cooker, or what do they call them, Instant Pot. You can do that, and the whole recipe would probably take about 7 to 12 minutes, depending on your Instant Pot instructions. But we're going to do this the old-fashioned way in a Dutch oven, in the oven. So again, we're going to cut right up through all the leaves, and we're going to have a nice looking, what do they call it, Mirepoix? Is that what they call it? Mirepoix? Yeah, or is that the other one? Well, see, that's what you get from an amateur chef. I'll just make it up as I go. So we have that, and we take a carrot. Now, there's a point of debate here with my wife and I on this, but I had a customer back in my days when I worked at the bank, and he was a farmer up in the Thumb area, up near Capac. Had a lot of farms, had lettuce farms, had carrot farms, which were the most interesting. And they would bring the carrots back to the warehouse after they harvested them, and they would run them in this conveyor belt that had huge amounts of water, and it would just be gushing over the carrots and just washing all the dirt and everything off of the carrots. And he would pull one out, and we ate them right then without peeling them. And you could see the little darker veins on the skin. And I said, "Is that okay?" He said, "Well, you eat an apple, don't you? You eat the skin on that." He said, "Doesn't that taste better?" Now we all know that when you get vegetables out of the garden, they always taste better. But in the skin, if you will, of the carrot, that's where a lot of the great flavor is. And when we're making something like a stew, you want those great root flavors. So we're going to leave them on, but I wash them really, really well. I mean, you wash a potato when you have a baked potato, leave the skin on. So same kind of idea here. So what we've got now is we've got our celery, carrots all cut, and I'm going to finish off one potato here. I did them all. I was going to go through all that, but I said for the sake of time, I only have a half-hour show here on It's Only Cooking. I'm just going to cut the last one up here now. Of course, my knife, having already been used, is getting a little sticky. So we'll get done here real quick. I'm keeping these relatively small too, so that we can get this dish done while it's hopefully still daytime out. And so we'll put those back in there in the water just to keep them good. Now, next thing we're going to do, this should be up to speed here. You can cook with a couple different things. You can use avocado oil, or you can use olive oil, or you can just use vegetable oil. Now, in my opinion, these obviously taste better. This has a low smoke point. Probably, what is it, around like 300? That burner right there right now is, probably because I turned my back on it too long, that's at 375 right now. I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. 375. This avocado oil, that can take much higher temperature. Better flavor in the olive oil. And of course, this is a cold pressed olive oil, so it's got great flavor. Not quite as good of a flavor, but a lot higher smoke point. So we're going to use that for this right now. And instead of just using vegetable oil, you don't need a lot, probably 2 tablespoons. And I know the producer says everybody's seen you cook onions, so we're going to kind of fast forward through that a little bit. Okay, again, little red wine, and just remember, we're only cooking, so no need to care. A little more. A little more. That's pretty good. All right, so we've got that going. We're going to want to let that the wine cook down a little bit, and that wine will do a couple things. It'll give more flavor, or a bolder flavor, to the broth, and it'll also give another layer of flavor. So once that gets done, and we get that, because once we put some more items in there, the de-alcoholization, is that a word? De-alcoholization. The alcohol burning off will stop, or it will stop a lot, and that's the flavor you're going to get at that point. So just a little longer. We'll keep it going, and one of the things we'll do is just put a little pepper in there and a little bit of salt. So we'll get that going. And we're going to give it a quick taste when we think it's to the point that we think it's good. Okay, while we're waiting for that to finish and we're waiting for that to go, we're going to quickly cut our meat up into cubes. And I don't know, they'll be 1/4-inch cubes, bite-sized cubes, fit on your spoon cubes, whatever you want to call it. You can see this couple things going on here. Because we're not normally, as you do in a beef stew, this meat's already cooked. This meat already has a seared at least one side seared on it, because I'm using kind of the ends here. The other thing it has is, normally when you do a stew, what happens is you put flour on it normally, and then that's going to thicken your stew along the way. Well, we're not going to do that because it's already cooked. So what we're going to do is we're going to have our little secret weapon here, which is a little bit of corn syrup. Or a little bit of corn syrup. We've got corn syrup here. We're going to make it a soda pop. No, we're going to put corn starch. This has been sitting here for a little while, so I got to Stir it up a little bit. There we go. Now it's starting to loosen. So what you do with this is you will stir this and get this very, very, very loose. And that way, when it's hot and boiling, you can put a little bit of that in the stew, and it'll thicken it up. We're ready to start putting in our vegetables in here. We're just going to dump them right on top of there. We're going to put our taters in there, and it doesn't matter the order. Everything's going to get mixed up anyway. The idea here is that we want to get nice layers in the flavor, which we've already done with the wine. And now we're going to put the meat in there. Now this meat, remember, as I told you, it has thyme on it already. It has a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper, all those things like that. And when this does cook, it's just like I said, come out of the refrigerator. So it's a little bit firm. Now we've got this. We're going to put the meat, again, also in the pot. Now one of the things you want to do is you want to get everything coated here. So I'm just going to mix it up just a little bit, not a lot. You can tell I have no finger feeling left. I like to put a little of this herbs from Provence. It's just a lazy man's kind of seasoning. Not too much. We're only making a small batch here, so we don't have to put a lot. So I want to put everything in here. I want to put a little bit of salt. You can see I didn't do it. Look, a little pinch of salt. A little pinch of pepper. Not a lot. Let's put some onion powder. We already got a lot of onions, but onion powder, this is different, so it's going to be a little bit different flavor profile. Even though there's thyme on the prime rib, a little bit of this. If I had fresh, my fresh is all gone, so I don't have any left, but just, it adds to it. It's going to add to the flavor. And stir this up pretty good. And then because, I forgot my sugar. A dash of sugar. And I know you're going, why would there be sugar in there? Because that actually helps flavors transfer really well. So we put a little of that in there. Not too much. You don't want to make it sweet. You just want to bring the flavors out. And then because we're not going to have a chance to mix everything in the pot, I'm pouring some tomato sauce in there. You don't like tomato sauce, it gives you heartburn, whatever, just use more broth, because you want to get about 2 or 3 cups. You want to get about 3 cups here of liquid to cover it and make everything cook really well inside the pot there. So we've got that all going pretty well, all mixed up. We're going to just pour this right over everything. I'm just giving a nice pour over top of everything there. You can see it almost looks like it's ready to eat right now. It looks so good. At the end of this, and I haven't pulled them out, we're going to put frozen peas in this, and it's going to just be a really nice finish on that. Okay, so we can bring this up to temperature, get it so it has a head start on cooking a little bit. As you can see, that didn't take but 20 minutes, 15 minutes to do everything on that dish. It's in one pot. Got a couple of knives. I like to mix all of the broth. Again, I use the Better Than Bouillon broth. Your seasoning in it, just to make it your seasoning. You know, if you really want to be lazy, just go buy some roast beef stew seasoning if that's what you want to do. But I think the fresh things you put in it taste better. If you have fresh thyme, it's even better. If you want to put sage in it, put sage in it. If you want to put, I guess I better put my garlic in there because I did call for that, didn't I? I'm going to mince it. I'm going to mince it, crush it. I'm going to make it be really, really easy to blend in with the, I'm going to put it in here like this because it'll blend easier. I was going to dice it and chop it, but as you can see, we're live here. When it goes wrong, you see it wrong, and that's how it gets done. And the only last thing I'm going to put in here is a couple of bay leaves. Now, again, if you don't like bay leaves or you object to them, don't put them in. If you've got enough seasoning in here already to give it flavor, but bay leaves, again, give it that darker, earthier flavor. I didn't put any mushrooms in it either, and you can put mushrooms in. You can put just about any vegetable you want in. At any rate, that's what we're doing there. We're going to get that in the oven, and that'll sit in there for an hour or two just so all the flavors can blend and mix real nice, and we'll get on that sandwich.
Canine Stray Rescue is Oxford's own local dog rescue. Call them at 248-628-0435 or go to their website dogsaver.org and click on the Canine Stray Rescue League link.
Okay, well, welcome back, and we're going to start making our prime beef sandwich, I guess it's going to be. We have our shaved beef here in the front. We have, I I picked what I thought would be a good tasting roll. Pretty simple items. There's our old friend, the red onion again. Slivered very fine. We're going to just pan fry that for a moment. We're not going to really try and change the color too much. We're just going to try to sweeten it. And then just some leftover red and yellow peppers, and I slivered them just so they'll cook, and that'll make it nice and go on it. And then, of course, our cheese. Now, you know, you have so many charcuterie trays during the holidays. We had a lot of cheese left over. I grated it. Don't buy grated cheese. Use one of these guys right here. Put your cheese that way. There's no anti-caking agent on it then. This stuff melts really good. And we're just going to do it that way. It's going to have a lot better flavor. We're going to do everything in one pan. We're going to flip the shot here in a minute, but we're going to take this and we're going to have a good base on this so that it doesn't all leak through. We cook this, and we're going to brown this on the. You know what? Let's just go for it here. Let's just cut it in whole. So we're going to take that and we're going to brown it on the pan. We'll pull that out, put the cheese on it, let it kind of get a head start melting. We'll get these onions and peppers kind of on the side, the cooler side of the pan, and we're going to brown and get some nice little charred tips on this prime rib that we shaved here. So that's what we're going to do. I'm going to get these buttered up and throw it on there. So be right back and join me back at the stove. Okay, thanks for joining me over at the stove. Let's get our buns on here now. Our rolls, we're gonna get them a little toasted, and that'll get them hot so we can get that butter started melting. It'll take just a minute for that. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna pull this so you can see it. We're gonna put everything. I did a little decoration cucumbers. Cucumbers always go good. This won't have any spice to it. It could, but it won't. One of the things we can put on this, if we really have a flavor for it, is a little mayonnaise mixed with some horseradish, just a little bit. Whip it in there and put it on the top layer, and that always goes good with beef if you want to do that. You can also put pepperoncinis on this, sliced pepperoncinis, bell peppers or banana peppers, anything else you want to put on it. That's really what we're trying to do, is just get a flavor profile that you're going to like. Okay, I think we're getting to a point here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. We'll put that over here, keep that nice and warm. Let's put a little oil on this. And without causing too much of a stir here, let's make sure it's not going to sizzle all over the place and mess everything up but again. Now, we're just going to give this, remember, it's cooked already, but this stuff's always great when you get a nice little dark little crust on it. In fact, let me grab my salt and pepper and spill it all over the place and get some pepper on this, just because that gives it a little more flavor. It always helps when you give yourself extra mess to clean up. Now while that's cooking, we're going to put this cheese on here so it gets a head start to melt. The other thing by putting this caramelization or this toasting on the bread is it's going to keep some of the juices from going everywhere. So we don't want to cover that too much. And I don't care if it gets on both sides of the bread, won't hurt a thing. How are we doing here now? Oh yeah, there we go. Now we get these about to where we want them like that. We're going to throw our red onions on this same pan. Remember, we're trying to use less pans. And this, we can take some of our salt that we had a little mishap with there. And we're really just trying to give these onions a little color, that's all. Just trying to give them a little bit of the oil on them. Get them so that they're a little milder, but they're cut so thin anyway. And we're not going to use all of them. We're not going to use all of everything here. This is just going to use enough to flavor our dish. Put cheese in the pan, get it sticking. Alright, we might need a little more oil on our vegetables there, just so they can sear a little bit. There we go. I don't want to brown them up like you sometimes see these. They're all grilled so hard that you can't discern one vegetable from the other. We want to have that nice bright festive color still, and it'll be fine. Has a little crunch to it. That's good. We're going to have crispiness on the meat here. The cheese is going to be soft and gooey, and these are going to be not quite al dente, and they won't be either crispy either or brown like the stuff that sits on a grill for 3 hours when you're going to get a Philly steak. It just sits there forever. So we'll try to keep these so they're still a little bit flavorful. And we have way more than we need for just the one sandwich we're making, but that's okay too. I think we're pretty good here. We can start putting this meat on here now. Now you can pile it if you have more. This is going to be a good way to eat it, just like this. And then we'll throw some peppers on there. This isn't going to be neat and clean. This is going to be all over the place, but that's all good. You can knife and fork it if you have to. And you can see the onions have gotten to be a good, nice color there. The peppers are on there nice and good. And now we can take that sandwich. It's not going to stay on because we're going to knife it in a minute. We put a couple of toothpicks in there, but we'll do that when we take it over to the table here to slice it up and give it a taste. So let's join me back on the other side at the big table. Thanks. And through the magic of television, welcome back to our front table where we have our finished sandwich and we have our stew that has now finished. Finished off with peas. It was a little thin when I took it out, so I did put some of the cornstarch. Make sure it's stirred up good so it doesn't clump. And when you put in like a teaspoon or two at a time and stir it and give it a few minutes. Now normally cornstarch, it thickens right up because it's very, very hot, so it thickens right up. But let it, try it, make sure it's not too thick. You don't want to have, beef stew pudding. So do it. I putting in like 3.5 teaspoons, and it looks pretty good. Then when it was hot and done, I put the frozen peas in it and stirred them up. And that heat of the stew will get the peas right where they need to be. So we've done the cooking. Now it's time for only eating. What do I start with? Let's see, Miss Producer, what do I start with? The sandwich? I think the sandwich. Let's give that a bite. You see, I toothpicked it up here. This might be forking food because it's some of these slid off there. Probably, if you want to make it, I'd put more cheese over the top and eat it that way, but it's going to be just fine. This is my Guy Fieri, the elbows out moment. I mean, it's just dripping. It's absolutely delicious. I made a good choice with the bread. It was just a bakery made bread, but it's soft. If it's too hard, everything will squirt out. So I like the bread to be a little softer. It's absolutely delicious. The meat is so tender and flavorful. And the peppers give a little bit of crunch, so they're really good. Now, and these again, I just decorated up. A little bit of cucumbers, cut cucumbers, with a little garlic expression seasoning on it. Very good, very light compared to the sandwich, so it's a nice little contrast with it. I like cracking pepper on it. Put the fancy salt on it. Let's see what we got here now. Now you can see that. If I can get you a close up there, Miss Producer. See how beautiful that is. I mean, if you want to make it thicker, you can do that. I think it's just fine where it is. But now it's only eating. So let's see how this came out. So that soup is really perfect. You can taste all the layers in it, the wine, and if it was still too still too dark or still too earthy tasting and not enough depth to it, you can always take a lemon. A little bit at a time. You squeeze some lemon juice into the pot. Don't put it in your individual bowl, but put it in the pot. Stir it up. Give it a taste. Try it again. Put a little more in. If you like it, that gives it a little brightness at the end. If you really want to do it, you can also put butter in it. Put a little butter. Everything's better with butter, but that's going to make it, again, it's going to make it deeper and not brighter. But so far, all the peas have the perfect doneness. The potatoes are done. The meat is just falling apart juicy. So thanks for stopping in again. That's Only Cooking, and we'll see you next time when we try something new.